Live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another photo mishmash. This one's being broadcast live November 1st, 2017. Happy November, Steve. I'm so glad you could
Happy
join us.
November, everybody.
I've got my good friend Steve Skurge from Steve Skurge Photography here along with all of us. And I think we're gonna dive right into it because we don't have anybody new in the group, anybody new watching this. Everybody here is interested to know a little bit about PEN, the Photo Enthusiast Network.
Yeah, big day, huh?
It is a big day. It feels like the last week, and I'm sure you feel like this, Steve, as well, has just been pretty much nonstop preparing for this. So in a nutshell, the Photo Enthusiast Network is a much nicer version of what I've been offering in Patreon to you wonderful people that have been supporting me and getting in return access to videos and these weekly shows and critiques and all of that stuff. It is a library of videos on a variety of topics. And the important thing to remember is this is just the beginning. When I think, and many of you, I look over in the chat room and so many of these names I see have been here for over a year, some close to 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer. It was about 2.5 that I started the Patreon group, I think.
Wow.
So, it's fantastic to see you all still with us. You haven't left yet. But when I think about what was available to you when you signed on as a supporter 2 years ago, it's just like a handful of Lightroom videos. That was pretty much it. And what I look at, what we are starting with today in the Photo Enthusiast Network with hundreds of hours of content, including those Lightroom videos, including additional Lightroom content, and all of this content from Dave and Allie and Steve. You're going to have stuff up there soon as well that is just covers the breadth of photography. And that's one of the things that I feel like I've been seeing. Some of you have increased your photography skills in such awesome ways. All of you have increased your photography skills. Some of you are going in directions where I'm no longer an expert. Interior real estate. Steve, you're an expert in that. You've successfully run a real estate interior business. And Dave and Allie being professional photographers. I don't actually call myself a professional photography. I think technically I'm not. I don't make my living from taking pictures. I make my living from you all. And so having those resources here and adding to it over the next year, 2 years, 3 years is just really exciting. Yeah. So it's a catalog of videos with more coming every week. It is a community Facebook group similar to what we have now. And now, none of you watching, I think, fall into this category, but every once in a while I hear this, I'd love to join, but I don't do Facebook. And now we have a whole separate message board available to us as well. So if you don't do Facebook, or if you'd rather not do Facebook, or you just want another place to post your questions, your excited links to a picture or a shoot that you've done that you want feedback on, we have that as well.
Yeah.
What else am I missing, Steve? Anything else to add?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And the thing that I'm really excited about, I think what everybody that's on the line right now is going to be brought into or given the opportunity to join PEN, Photo Enthusiast Network. We started referring to it as PEN, but immediately, right away. And that was always something from day one that we decided to put this thing together. We talked about your current audience. And really, it's some of this was sparked from what's been happening with these, not just the Mishmash shows, but really that Facebook support group that you just watch people grow. And we just found that there's a need for educating people and coming alongside them and creating this community in between tours that we're doing. And this is the answer that we've come up with. And the cool thing about it is it will just get better over time. I know we've talked about it a little bit in shows past, but that's something that we're very, very excited about. So today was really what we've been referring to as a soft launch. We want to roll it out to you folks here as Patreon supporters, roll it out to a lot of the McKay clients that have done tours with us and stuff before. But as time goes on, it will grow and we all learn better together. And there'll just be more opportunities to get together on photo meetups in your local area, buy and sell used gear online. And, just a lot of really cool stuff. We have big plans for this thing. And today is very exciting as day one. It doesn't come without a few headaches, and that's why we call this a soft launch.
Yeah.
But you know, after the first of the year, we're pretty optimistic that we'll be able to get people like Groupon involved and things like that, and really expand this thing. And it's not about making it big. It's about getting people involved that are paying a fee to be here, so they have a vested interest in the community growing and people growing together. And we found that with your support group, right? I mean, if it was just a public Facebook page, we wouldn't have near the efficiency and the growth that we've seen in the last couple of years as we have with the support group. So
and the caring, I would add. I mean, that's, you know, I said this. I'm going to say this soon in a public video to my wide audience. It's the caring that us creating this have, along with the community that's in it. And I just really love how everybody cares for everybody else's feelings and growth and skills. It's worked out really nicely. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned it is certainly a soft launch. We discovered very quickly that we're pretty good photography educators. We're not so good at, you know, necessarily coding everything to a T. So that link this morning that went out to all of you Patreon folks, that was a little messed up. It is now working. I will be posting that link in the group again very soon, now that we know it's working. If you did manage to sign up, you just have to go back in with that same sign up and you'll now see everything that you have access to. And, you know, to answer a couple of questions, I just saw one go by. Is Penn going to be a website? You know, it's bigger than a website. There is a website where you each have your own login. So this is what I love, because I've kind of been bootstrapping all of this. If you know, the places you go to get to my information right now, it's all over the place and it looks like crap. It really does. It's not something I've spent time making look pretty, because I'm like, here's the information. You all care about it. I don't care so much how it looks, but it's nice when everything works. You've got your own login. You've got your own way to reset your login. If you forget, you don't know the number of times people have been like, I lost my login. And I have to say, there actually is no login. It's just that same password we all share. It's just, you know, my system hasn't been the best. So I'm really excited about having a system that works and provides all of this seamlessly. And, you know, again, there's going to be a few bumps in the road, but that's the goal. And I'm really excited for that. So it's more than a website. It is a place to go to see these videos. You could call that a website. And then, of course, it is the community Facebook group as well as message boards. And we didn't even mention this, but, you know, this show is going to be part of that. And webinars as well. And we're still working out the exact detail of what does that mean. But it's going to be a way to bring in more experts. Dave and Allie have more chances to get images critiqued and to get feedback and to get your questions answered. So really, it's just a lot of more goodness for you all. And it's really as a thank you all for supporting me since the early days. You're getting grandfathered in for at least the next year at the whatever price you're paying now. And you know, that it's just going to just work. You do have to go and sign up for the other system through that link that I'll post in the group right after this show. So make sure that you have that. But, you know, once you have that sign up, then you're in. And there is no charges for you when you go sign up at that site, because you're coming from my Patreon.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Clear? And that's, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer anyway, cost-wise. We're running a special right now. The annual membership is $96 flat fee, and you're given a $150 voucher for a McKay trip along with everything else. So, I mean, that's already a win-win for everybody. But to get grandfathered in, I would encourage every single one of you to take advantage of signing up for an account and getting involved in there, because we need you. We need you to kind of spearhead some of the discussions in the chat and stuff like that. It's like opening up a restaurant, right? You want to just get people in there experiencing the food and talking about it and sharing it with others. And, you know, we humbly ask for your feedback if there's something that we need to improve upon. And then also just to get out and tell your friends about it, because this is a way that we can truly teach and communicate with people without having to ask people to spend thousands of dollars and go on a trip. I mean, those are amazing. They're awesome. But how do we leverage that and continue it on an ongoing basis around your schedule at a good cost? And you guys get it for free.
Yep. Yep. And I think, Steve, you mentioned this as well, which I just want to reiterate feedback. So as you're going through, obviously notice anything broken at all or if goofy, let us know right away. Send me a message and we'll look into it. If you have content that you would like to see added in the very near future, let us know. I mean, again, it's kind of one of the benefits of being an early supporter and an early adopter. You get to drive this a little bit. We'll let you put your hands on the wheels a little bit.
Well, and I think as time goes on, it's a good point, because we do want to have, some guest instructors on from time to time. Somebody that, I think of Roger, or some of you folks that are experimenting with different places to sell online. That's going to be really valuable information that we can leverage and use to help other people down the road. And we may call somebody like Roger on and say, hey, we want to introduce you on our next live webinar and have you kind of talk about your experience. So those types of ideas are constantly things that we're talking about. And as time, like I said earlier, as time goes on, this thing will just get better and better the more people are just kind of learning together and building a community.
Yep.
So yeah, if you can't tell already, we're pretty excited.
We are.
A little sleepless. It's felt like finals week.
Yeah. Tim's asking free for a year. I mean, I think that's sure, Tim. Technically it's not, because you're paying Patreon. So as long as you're a current Patreon subscriber, I should say, it is free for the next year. And one of the nice things that some of you might want to move over completely into the new system and ditch Patreon. We can talk about that down the road as well. You could do that as well, because you have the option of paying annually. I've had more than one person say to me, I like the idea of Patreon, but is there any way to pay annually, so I don't have to think about this each month, and Patreon doesn't allow for that. So but this system does. You can pay monthly or annually, and the list of perks is huge. It's awesome, and it's just going to grow.
Yeah, so it is important for people to realize that everything you're currently doing still stays the same. Mishmash, Facebook support group, all your YouTube stuff. This is just in addition to everything else that we're bringing to the table. I still have Steve Scourge Photography, the McKay still have McKay Photography Academy and everything that goes with it. This is just one more tool in the toolbox, and we think it's pretty critical one.
Yeah, sounds very good. Renee is asking for access to the so she can watch the show. Do you? Let's see.
Renee, my Renee?
You're Renee. Yeah, you're Renee.
I don't know. In the past, Chris has always just texted her.
Yeah.
And I feel embarrassed to ask her to do that, because I should have a link that I can just say, hey, honey, just click on here.
I'm just going to say send her the link. Just in case anybody thought we were getting too big for our bridge or anything. Okay.
I got my dad in town this week too, so he's down with my wife. They're probably going to watch it together.
Nice. Yep. Yeah, I think that's great about Penn. If people have questions, I see David Newbold just said he's in the site. It's all working well for him. So again, if you grab that earlier link, it's there, and it looks like it's working well, and looking forward to your feedback and looking forward to providing you lots more awesome content. Now let's start talking about the show a little bit, because actually I have a fairly hard out. I know your dad's there. Thanks so much for joining us, Steve. I didn't think Steve was going to be with us. I thought he was off in the mountains with his dad, but he made it back in time for the show. I really appreciate that. It's so much better with you on, I've realized now, after having several shows with you on in a row, and then I was like, that's just gonna be me again. And in this camera.
Well, we'll see what happens with any comments that come into the chat room, because last time we logged in, I think it logged under my name. So my wife was going to make some comments, but she realized very quickly that it would look like they were coming from me as I'm on the show, and it just would have been weird. So
Gotcha.
With my dad here, it just gets even weirder.
Yeah. I don't want to make this all Penn show, but Caroline, you're saying the link you were given this morning now works, is what I should say. I took it away for a period of time because it was broken. But if you followed that link this morning and you kind of signed up, and you probably ended up at this place that didn't look very exciting, if you go back now, log in with that information you used before, it should look much more exciting. So there's nothing else that needs to be done. For those who missed the link this morning, I'll be sharing it out very soon. And I think think that's what I wanted to say. And very soon, you Patreon people who have signed up through the special link will be getting a very nice welcome email that Steve spent many hours crafting that has lots of more information in it. So that's coming as well. And again, it's just really the polished, we're still working on it, but the fit and finish to this is just so much better than what I was providing you all. I'm really excited to, have all that.
Well, and I should say, it's a soft launch, but that was really the only thing that was kind of broken this morning. Anybody that was coming in brand new, subscribing and putting their credit card in and all that good stuff seemed to be working fine. It was just the private link that we wanted to send out to you folks was not operating properly. So thank you very much for your patience as we got that ironed out. And, thankfully that was our really only snafu that I know about. Of course, I've been cruising around with Pops all day, but
I got a little more work for him, but let's move on and talk a little bit about week in review, because we've saw we had our fall and coastal
things are getting really jittery. I don't know if you can hear me. You froze.
I don't know. I've got everything. I'm not frozen.
Oh, you look good now. I don't know if other people are getting that at all. Guess we'll find out in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So I said, Steve, you want to talk a little bit about our fall color workshop and Maine coastal tour? That was a while back, and then we'll get into some gear stuff.
Yeah, that was awesome. So that tour is always a blast because it's kind of laid back. The colors were just beautiful. I mean, they literally would change every single day. We got up there and we were a little bummed because they'd gotten a lot of moisture in the summertime up in New England. And so there was a lot of green up in the mountains, and we were hoping to see more of the leaves turning. And literally we woke up the following day and they were, amber and orange and red. And then each day it was like we timed it just right. It just got more and more colorful. I know you had a chance, Toby, to shoot the D850 quite a bit, and I was a little jealous of that. Very jealous of the articulating screen and all the other stats of that camera. Almost as jealous as I am that you've been getting to shoot the A7R3 lately.
Yeah. All right. So let me talk. Yeah.
Not to jump off the tour at all. I mean, we just had an awesome time. Really great group of people, and I just love these trips because we always have a bit of a reunion with old friends and clients that have been on numerous trips, and we make new friends and they come into the fold. And this one was no exception. And Acadia National Park was absolutely gorgeous. We hit the perfect weather, ate tons of lobster, and just had a really nice time there.
I think David ate a ton of lobster.
Yeah.
The rest of us ate some lobster.
Yeah, some of it made its way over onto our plates.
National Park is one of my favorite parks in America. It's hard to pick favorites, but it just offers so much. It's just such a beautiful place, and it feels approachable and manageable. I mean, you can see a good chunk of the park in a day, but then there's all of these little nooks and crannies to poke into, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. I did shoot with the D850 on that trip and loved it, except for the fact that it was a DSLR. Now, I know that's a little unfair.
Come on, man.
I know. But, this is what's happening, Steve. As we get to these higher megapixel sensors, it is more and more critical that nothing impact the sharpness that sensor is able to provide. And when we've got this big old mirror flapping around and we don't have any sensor stabilization, and the focus brain being separated from the sensor, I think we're starting to, maybe this will come back to haunt me, but I don't think so. We're starting to see the limits of what a DSLR can do. Because here's what I'm saying. We've got a really top-notch sensor in that Nikon D850. I mean, what it broke the news because it made news because it was the first to score 100. It's the first sensor to score that high on DxO marks, whatever. And take whatever you will on those sensor scores. They are somewhat comparative, and you can use them to make some judgments. But in the real world, I saw a fair number of out of focus shots because of the lens I hadn't calibrated it. And, Nikon provides a way to do that in camera, but, and if you were working with a smaller megapixel sensor, these are slight out of focus issues. And also I feel comfortable in talking about this because at the recent Sony event, we talk about all the cameras at the event, what we like, what we don't like among the press. Other people have found similar to what I found about the Nikon, and that is just that alignment can be off a little bit too easily. We've got mirror slap. Maybe that mirror isn't cushioned quite as much as it could be. And not having a stabilized sensor means you need to really watch your shutter speed to be double careful or on a tripod. I just saw enough shots that, make me a little concerned for that. But shooting through live view, being locked on a tripod, the sensor produces awesome, awesome images. And I'd be very happy to walk around with that camera a lot, except for its size and weight. But it is a lovely camera to use with all of its little functional buttons. And I love the glow in the dark or the light up buttons. So overall, really, really nice. If you're in the Nikon world and you're thinking about upgrading, certainly a fine camera. The D810 though is still a fantastic value. That's the thing where all of these cameras are so good.
Yeah. And Nikon finally got the live view right. And I know it's in the D850. And what was the other one you were? Was it 7500?
7500. I actually think they made this change. I shot very little with the D810. I'd never officially reviewed it. I've had my hands on it a little bit. I think they may have made this change in the D810.
I wouldn't be surprised. I was always surprised, just speculating and talking about it, that one of the top end cameras wouldn't have gotten that corrected a couple of years back, because Canon just has it nailed. Their live view is just phenomenal. I use it all the time on trips, and then in my real estate business, I lived with it. But to your point though, I tend to agree. I'm a DSLR shooter. I'm a Canon loyal guy, and I would be lying if I didn't say that there's a big part of me who's feeling a little jealous and a little envious of the A7R3 that people are going to start getting their hands on. And even the A7R2, you've been using that for a couple of years, and still it's a phenomenal buy of a camera. And so I think you're probably right. I think the mirrorless is probably going to be the future of this. I disagree with that. I'm not jumping ship just yet.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the A7R3. So I got to go to the Sony event in New York City. I love those events, not only because I get to hang out with other really smart press people and pick their brain. Most of the time when I'm creating these reviews, I'm sitting here alone in my room thinking about the camera, or I'm out shooting with the camera, but I don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or say things about. And it's just really interesting to talk to these other people that are all in the same mindset as me, and get their thoughts on why is the D850 so hard to get a hold on. Some people think that there's issues that similar to what we were seeing with the mirror slap and the out of calibration, that they're struggling to really produce those at a level without issues in them. That's somewhat hearsay, but I was wondering that, and other people, I'm not the only one wondering that based on how incredibly slowly those cameras are trickling out. But this is what I've said about the A7R2 for the last year. I love its output. I don't love using it, because it has always been slow. It's taken me way longer to get used to using that camera than any other I've ever shot with. And I still at times when, I feel safe sharing this in the safe space. You won't make fun of me. In times of shit's going down, I start to fumble with that camera still to get my focus point where I want, to do what I want. It never has been super easy to change around the focus point. There's double buttons. One button will do one thing in one mode and in another, and I always end up in the wrong mode. And, it's just for landscapes and slow moments. It is a fantastic camera, and now a fantastic value. But when things start to get more exciting, like in Tanzania last year, when a lion would start to run, or the cheetah would start to run, or there'd be some kind of action, man, I gave up on that camera and went to the A6500 for its better autofocus and faster performance. And now I don't have to do that. The control scheme of this camera is lovely. Its autofocus performance is just fantastic. I just watched it track these dancers going all over the place on the dance floor just so well, and literally doing flips. And as their face comes back into view, you watch the eye focus just lock on to their little eye. It's magic.
Wow.
And that's it. It's in focus. And so you don't even have to worry about moving the focus point near their eye. As they're popping into view or as they're walking towards you, you just hit that IAF and you can assign that to any button you want. The customizability they've added to this camera is way, way better than in the past.
So is that like an instant face detection focusing that you assign that button to?
Yep, exactly.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah, yeah. So it just locks on, and then it's dumb. It's dumb easy. That's what I mean to say. It's just like, all right, I got that person's eye, and as they're moving, it'll keep it in focus, and that's what you want in focus. And if you don't, then you push the other focus button. It's nice. Dual card slots, nice. The battery life, so much better. I mean, to me right now, the only real questions remain about Sony is, one, we could have a few more lenses, and we could have a few more affordable lenses.
Yeah.
They've got enough lenses now that they're all there, but we don't really have a lot of affordable ones, which keeps some people scared away. I'll say though, do you want to put cheap lenses on a sensor that's good? Same thing with Nikon. Nikon's got tons and tons of lenses, plus lots of affordable ones. But if you look carefully on their D850, they produce a list that says, here's the lenses that we recommend you use on this camera. All those affordable ones aren't on it. It's all the high-end ones, because they too recognize if you're going to put a crappy, or I should say crappy, if you're going to put a more affordable lens on a high-end sensor like that, you're going to hold back the sensor performance.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think about if I was to ever migrate over to a different brand, that's the whole thing. Is I've got this whole world of Canon at home, and so what do I do? Well, these Metabones adapters seem to, you don't really sacrifice anything with using those. No. And so I can take my 24-70 Canon L lens, that's great, and I can put it right onto a good sensor of a Sony or Nikon with a Metabones, right? I haven't personally done it, but I know you have, Toby.
Yep. And
you're getting all the benefits without having to buy extra lenses, or just rent what you need for certain trips.
Yep.
So yeah, and there's a couple of comments coming through I just wanted to address, is the fancy camera comments, and that is, it happens to be a time right now where the D850 and the A7R3 and the A9 and all that stuff is kind of coming out. It's right before Christmas time, and so this is the time when these things get launched, and they're high end, they're super expensive. I cannot deny that. I started my business with a Rebel, and then I quickly went to a 60D. And then after I made a little bit of money, I stepped up to 5D Mark III. And, but I'm, professional photographer. I do this for a living, and you look at gear for a living. And these are amazing cameras, and I never once take that for granted. But, part of what we like to do here is kind of nitpick some of this stuff, because if you are going to spend that kind of money on a camera, it better be damn good.
Mm-hmm. Just Tim says, he's live view and focusing in the D750 isn't great. And yeah, it's not fast in the Nikons, but when live view focusing for any of the DSLRs is the most accurate focusing method, because it's the contrast detect and it's done right on the sensor. So there's never any out of alignment issues. It might be a little slow. It might not be suitable for all types of photography, or certainly isn't, but it's the most accurate. And what's the other thing? Oh, the other thing, Sony, that, we still, jury's out on is how is their repair centers. They've put a lot of money, a lot of time and energy into saying we've got pro repair support now on level with Canon and Nikon. But until we hear more stories of success, we just don't know. Prior to this, their repair center just wasn't up to pro standards, if you could even consider it pro. And then there's the overheating issue with 4K video. I'll say this, that I think it's way overblown on the internet, but in certain circumstances, your camera will overheat and say, hey, you got to shut it off for a little bit when you're recording 4K. I think that's still going to happen to some people in some situations. There's not enough design change to the body of this camera that I don't think that will happen. I saw it happen to me on the A9 when I sat it in the sun for about 20 minutes in Santa Barbara back in May. It was a very warm day. The sun was very warm. The camera got very hot, and then it was just sitting there, and it told me, hey, you know, you need to shut me off for a little while, and then it was happy. So, you know, it's not a perfect camera. The Sony is not a perfect camera, but it has addressed many of the issues people had with earlier models, and I personally have pre-ordered, mostly because I want a shiny new thing and I want to be able to talk about it. I mean, to be honest.
Let's be honest as photographers here. We do like gear.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I wanted to be able to talk about this knowledgeably and use it and see how it compares over a longer period of time than our gear or review alone would allow me. And like I said, there are times where I've frustrated and missed the action with the A7R2, and some of the shooting we do, most of it is kind of general travel and landscape, and the A7R2 has been fine for that. But there's enough that I was able to justify in my little puny brain, I need the shiny thing, that I decided I'm going to upgrade. And I'm going to sell my A7R2 to fund this. I have to find somebody. Actually, I kind of jokingly said that online, and somebody reached out to me instantly and said, hey, I'll buy it. And I said, it's pretty dinged up. And they said, it's okay. So I'm selling gear to make, you know, this work. You know, I'd love to have enough to.
You got a Canon 5D Mark III floating around there somewhere too.
I do. That's going to go up for sale too.
As well.
Yep. That's going to go up for sale too. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay. I think that's good about those cameras. I have another video coming out probably Saturday with my kind of wrap-up thoughts from the early hands-on with the A7R III. So that will be, look for that. But then if you keep this all a secret, I know that I have more hands-on time with that camera in the very near future. I'm not allowed to really say more than that, but in a couple of weeks, I'll be back with that camera before it's released to the public. And we'll be bringing you some more updates. And again, if you've got questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. And Ursula, I saw that you said you need an affordable Astro lens for your camera. You remember that? Yeah, look right here.
There it is.
So these just came back in. I got to hold it here.
What about $600 for that thing?
Well, this is the polycarbonate version. This is only $400.
Whoa,
$400. I haven't opened it yet, actually.
Still have the infinity lock?
This one does, yes.
Or whatever.
It comes in a white chocolate container. That's what I'm going to call it. Or just white. Did you know that white chocolate isn't actually chocolate? I just learned this from my kids.
I love white chocolate.
But it's not actually chocolate. Here it is. And here it is. I think, you know, with an adapter, Ursula, I think this is your answer. This is just, I've just been so impressed with this. I can't.
That's what, 2.4?
It's 2.4 f15. I think it's a better buy than the Rokinon, which is a little bit cheaper. I can't seem to be able to make the lens hood come off, but it does still have the lock switch under there. It's pretty small and compact.
Oh, that is small.
Yeah,
that's full manual, right?
Full manual, yes. But you do have aperture control, whereas the Rokinon aperture control is on the lens. With this, the aperture control you do in camera as well. So I'll be talking more about this. And what I'm most excited about is so the issue with these is that you need gigantic filters if you want to do any kind of daytime long exposures, you know, ND filters. But all of these have support on the back for little gel filters.
You've got a couple of those, don't you?
Well, they just sent them to me.
Cool.
I said, hey guys, I'd love to talk about these. I've never used them before. Let's try them out. So this is a incredibly much more affordable way to get long daytime exposures with a lens like this, because it only needs to cover the rear element. It doesn't have to be gigantic and cover the front element. So, I mean, and wow, imagine carrying look at them. They're little. Now, I'm not sure what the quality is like.
Well, we'll find out. Are they are they like gels?
I was able. Sorry, say it again.
Are they like gels as far as the quality of whatever the material is? Is it like a thick gel?
That's what you should consider them. Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't opened them yet. Let's see. Okay. Why I'm opening them and talking about this, let's say that Roy put out a fantastic review on the Peak Design backpack, which I know the Peak Design backpack has been around for a while, but Roy was interested in it, and they sent him one along for test. I can't get him out, so I'm just going to leave it. They sent him one along for testing, and Roy, I think in general, you really liked it. If you haven't seen these backpacks, they don't look so much like a photo bag. They look more like a very modern, clean backpack. And if you live, yeah, they're nice. And if you live in the Peak Design world, like with the capture clip or the leash, you know, they have some neat little bells and whistles that kind of integrate further with that. But let me just bring up his page real quick and show you a couple of the pictures that Roy posted up of that. And you know, they're not cheap, but they're very well made, and I think their value is good. So this is a nice long review, and of course everything we're talking about is linked in the show notes right down below this video. You can see, let's go ahead and share the screen. There it is, and click there. Okay, so we've got, you can see when everything is out of it, it completely opens up if you want. So that's both an upside and a downside, because at times, Roy said you can kind of lose a lens cap at the top and it will kind of find its way all the way to the bottom because it's not kind of completely compartmentable sealable. But there's tons of great clips and video in here that talk more about it. And overall, it does look quite nice. Kind of makes me want one.
Is there a waist strap with that, and like a chest?
There is.
Connector?
Yep. Roy calls it a belly strap. Technically, Roy, that's a sternum strap. So there's the sternum strap, and there also is a waist strap as well. You know, that waist strap is fairly small in that it is really just kind of a strap. It's not a padded hip belt like you might get on a larger backpack as well. Right. Yeah.
It's a good looking bag. Who was it? Was it Caleb that was posting about kind of paring down rather than going out every time with all of your gear? He was
that's David Newbold.
Oh, it's David Newbold. That's right. My Nashville guy.
Yep.
Yeah, he was talking about that. And I mean, the timing of it was just amazing to me, because I literally had just been thinking about that morning, and I logged on and I saw that post. And I'm kind of in that position right now where I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional about what I'm going to shoot, what I expect to see, what I would like to use, and just carry along less stuff. I think your shoulder problem kind of had me rethinking this, because it's one thing to do it for 6 months or so, or a trip here or there. It's another thing, you know, at this point, we're traveling all the time, and you know, we're going to keep doing this for quite a while. And you start lugging this 30-pound bag around everywhere you go, it starts to get pretty heavy. The size of that Peak Designs pack looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. And again, you know, you use the leash, which, man, I'd love to do a quick little review from your experiences with the leash. Not now, but that, and you know, you've used other Peak products. They're really well done. They both are functional and they look good at the same time. Yeah,
I use their stuff. I've got a million of those little round red clip things, and I just put them on everything. I mean, your zipper breaks, you just throw one of those things on there and use it as a zipper. I mean, they're awesome. And I can take my straps, and they're all made out of that like seatbelt material. They're never going to break. I'm a huge fan of their stuff. I haven't gone to the backpack because I was a little afraid of how weather tolerant it would be, you know, with a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So that's nice. Thanks, Roy, for putting that up, and take a look at it. Jamie, I know you're interested in it, so take a look at that. My show notes. So we've talked about cameras. This is where we usually get to the Shutterstock update. I posted in the group the other day, the update that you all really care about is, did I ever sell any of those damn candy corn pictures? And the answer is no. I was so disappointed. I wanted to sell at least one.
That is a drag.
So, but you know what's interesting is when I was looking at my portfolio the other day, I looked at those shots and I thought, man, they all look kind of old school. You know, just these clean white background with candy corn on it. It looks like stock photos of old. And I think that those don't sell these days, you know, like they used to.
I'm getting a little concerned now, because we were really cheering you on with those candy corn photos. And sure, there were discussions about whether or not you like candy corn, but we were cheering the photos on. Are we now becoming like an old school group that likes white vignettes on our pictures and old timeless candy corn photos? I don't know. Maybe it's time to think about where we're headed with all this.
Yep, that's a good point. And I'll say this, I got a note from Adobe Stock. I sold one more of the burrito fixins picture.
If it was a taco, you would have sold 5.
Oh, you just broke up for me a little bit, Steve. Sorry.
I was saying one more of the burrito. If it was a taco, you would have sold 5 more. That's too bad.
Yeah, I will say overall, I'm pretty happy. That owl is really my moneymaker. And over the course of October, I sold on average 35 images. Or I should just say, not on average, 35 images total. So over 1 image a day was sold, bringing me up to $195.53. So we're coming up. Oh, actually, I think it was November 11th. I started this experiment. I cannot believe I've been doing it since November 11th. So in, let's say, roughly a year, I've made almost $200. I'm okay with that for the amount of time and energy I put into it. But clearly, if I was trying to really make money at this, that's not a very good number. I would need to put in more. I love David Newbold has been sharing with us where he's making his money. And honestly, I think I might try a little Etsy experiment as well. Throw a couple of images up there, take David's expert advice. But one thing that I think is important to know from what David is sharing, from what I've been sharing, is in all of these cases, I mean, it has taken, well, David's case, it's taking work. I mean, he didn't just throw a couple images up on Etsy and then make these sales. You saw his post. If you haven't, you should go read. I think I'm going to ask David if you post some of those on my page. Because I think there's great information there. He has spent time and energy with SEO and keywords and advertising. You can't just put your stuff up there and expect someone to come along. And especially, I think the contrast of selling on his own website, Zenfolio, versus selling on Etsy, where he could make a lot more on Zenfolio because you don't have the middleman, but you don't get the traffic. Right. Whereas on Etsy, you get the traffic, but you got to pay a little bit more to the middleman. And so that trade-off, and I feel like that's the same with the Shutterstock as well. Some of you have, I'll say criticized. I don't really mean, you're being critical. Like, you're excited you sold 35 images, but what's the average earning per image? Is like 24 cents. But for me, I feel like that's where the traffic is. So I'm okay with that. If I had all of these images up on Etsy, they wouldn't have, I don't think I'd have more money, especially with the little bit of effort I've put into it. And Roy's pointing out Etsy's take is just 3.5%. Hey, that's really not too bad. So again, it takes time and effort. You throw up a couple images. I just flippantly said that myself, but you're not just going to make a bunch of sales. You have to put time and energy into it. So 3.5% really isn't too bad. Let's all get our images up there.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure they're not the same as David's, because then he'll be really bummed he shared all the secrets with us. Let's all get our molten
shot himself in the foot.
That's what I thought. I thought, oh, would he be mad? Well, I mean, I think the first picture that I would put up is like one of my Iceland waterfalls or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And I actually didn't finish saying this, but I have a heart out because it's Henry's 11th birthday today. That little blonde bluebird turns 11. Henry. Thank you. I'll pass that along to him.
I saw a picture of his Halloween costume last night. It looked awesome. Mm-hmm. What is that called again? That old-timey kind of technique?
Steampunk was what he called it. He was
that's
like
right.
A steampunk guy. And he was pretty funny. He was like, nobody's going to know who I am. I'm just going to make up a different name at every house. But nobody asked what they were anywhere except for like one house, which is always, I don't know. I kind of like to ask, but we had a good time. And we have a birthday tonight. Roy, you're at $4 with Shutterstock. You've got one more of Lansing, that reflection over the bricks that you were telling everybody. And again, there are links to all of these stock photography places that we're trying out, plus a bunch more that I don't even mention in the show notes. You can go link through and earn Roy a few affiliate pennies. It's a nice way to thank him for his time because, well, I only pay him peanuts, so then pennies on top of peanuts, and maybe he can afford some Taco Bell.
Maybe he can afford some candy corn soon.
Hey, I got some leftover. Anybody want me to send me leftover candy corn?
I got a whole bunch of stock photos of it that don't seem to be selling.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to briefly talk. This was in our show notes. a month ago or so about lens rentals, equipment rental trends from so far in 2017, and I think this is really interesting about kind of a take on the industry as a whole. And Sony was very proud to put up that they are now back in the #2 spot for interchangeable lens cameras, and ahead of Nikon, and also that they have the A9 is the best-selling camera over $4,000. So that's also interesting when you compare it against the Canon, Nikon. Now those are $1,500 more, but you know, again, they're the big names, and Sony's making some good trends here. So I just want to read through this really quickly, and Steve, jump in with thoughts. I don't know if you've actually had a chance to look at this, but Canon lenses were far and away the most popular rented lenses, taking up 9 of the 10 spots. So the only non-Canon lens that's in the top 10 is the Sony 24-70 f2.8, coming in at #5. The Canon 24-70 f2.8 L2 was the most popular. The Canon 51.2 was the most popular prime, 6th most popular overall. The first Nikon entry on the list was that very expensive but incredibly sharp 70-200 f2.8
Wow.
at 11th. And at least with lens rental, Sony is now a more popular rental brand than Nikon. And Sigma continues to gain ground, having become 20% more popular than in 2016. 20% growth. That's nothing to be sad about. And Fuji lenses skyrocketed, showing 96% more rentals. They probably started at a very low number, but still 96%. And Sony lenses increased 22%, while Canon and Nikon decreased 8% and 10% respectively.
I'm kind of surprised that Sony has jumped to that #2 spot over Nikon. I know. I mean, they've been really coming up, and I wonder if it's just because not as many people are buying the Sony lenses just yet. They're kind of new to the market. Well, some of them are, and people are trying them out. Where Nikon, you know, a lot of people are buying lenses for their Nikons and not renting as much. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good discussion, or good points that we don't quite know. And also, I think there was some fine print with Sony saying we're #2 spot, that there were some qualifiers there. So, you know, it's not necessarily as amazing as it sounds beating Nikon, but at the same time.
Well, they also said, what did they say? The best-selling A7R9 or whatever was the best-selling camera over $4,000. Is that so? Those are retail sales numbers. Those aren't.
Those are retail sales numbers.
Okay, and I mean that's a new camera, so that's got to be just like a month-over-month sort of comparison. You can't. You don't have 12-month historical data to go back on there. So.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I thought this was interesting. Yeah, a little fuzzy math always makes. And you know, the Sigma point. I mean, we found this in my reviews of the last 2 years. Sigma has come on strong and offered a great value. And we were actually talking to our buddies in Lens Pro To Go, our friends in Boston, about this. And I asked Paul, who's managing that, and said Sigma has been slow, you know, to be big in the rentals because people go to the Canon and to the Nikon. You know, they don't think about the third party so much, but he's seen a growth there as well in the last year. So,
yeah. Well, I know when we were there, you know, I was renting the Canon 14 2.8, which I've shot with in the past, but I wanted to shoot some stars with it. And the 14 1.8 Sigma is kept right next to that lens on their shelves. And there was like 6 14 2.8 Canons in stock ready to go and 1 14 1.8 Sigma next to it. Now, I don't know how many they bought or what they have available, but just glancing at their shelves, a lot of the Sigma art stuff was just out. It was gone. People are renting them.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. They're awesome lenses. And I think it'd be interesting to see a statistic about somebody rents a lens. What's the percentage of people that go into a store or, you know, order online and actually buy that lens after they've rented it? I'll bet that penetration ratio with Sigma is far higher than Canon, Nikon, or Sony at this point.
So you're breaking up a little bit there. I think it's my internet because I was loading up our photo from Space Picture, and while that was loading is when it was struggling to. So I didn't catch everything you said, but I think what you said hopefully went out how Google Hangouts works, if it needs to come through me or not. But
hopefully it did. The gist of what I said is it would be interesting to see a statistic involving somebody rents a lens, what percentage of those people then go out and buy that lens. And I don't know how you would track that, but my point is I would be willing to bet money that Sigma has a much higher purchase percentage after renting than Nikon or Sony or even Canon at this point, because I think people are trying them out before they buy, you know, just to see if it's as good as people are saying. And I think the Sigma art lenses are just awesome.
Yeah. Nice. Good. Oh, Maud's going to go because maybe she's using her bandwidth up. I don't think so. It's usually handling all this fine. But hey, let's move on to photos from space. This is where we bring this guy in, and we'll have to show Dave and Allie how to do all of this when we do our Photos from Space webinar, because I'm sure that's going to be part of it. And I'm just going to share this quick shot. It's an older one, but it's so cool. It is a jack-o'-lantern sun from way back in October 14th, 2014.
Dude.
That's quite jack-o'-lantern looking.
That's pretty sick.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool, man. That's one thing. I did see some fantastic jack-o'-lanterns and walking around yesterday. So thanks, Roy, for finding that great photo from space. Next part of the show is where we usually talk about the Instagram winners, which was PRTV Halloween or Instagram standouts, as we call them now, because everybody's many millennials in the group. I don't want, just kidding. But I really do want to call them standouts, because you're all winners when you contribute. But as Steve has said, and as I said, we've been just a little crazy busy around here. So the winner list will be out very soon, and we're just going to kind of skip beyond that for right now and talk about a discussion item. And I think I want to go with this very top one right here: when to show a sense of scale in photography. And hey, see, Steve, if you can recognize this first photo in here.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Where is that taken? Oh, it tells you right underneath, doesn't it?
I thought you were going to ask me the name of that one. I mean, it's something Foss in Iceland. Oh, Skogafoss. There it is.
Skogafoss, yeah.
That is probably my favorite waterfall that we go and shoot.
Yeah, I love it, because you can walk right up to the base and almost stand where the water is pouring down, just very, very close to it. You'll get quite wet. But
you get drenched, but it is a cool feeling.
It is. It is a cool spot. I mean, and this is one of the things that we did when we arrived at this point in our workshop back in July, was have somebody, Steve, I think you and I took turns going up to the base of the waterfall to act as a sense of scale, because this is one thing. I mean, it's kind of that popular thing on Instagram. I've referenced this from time to time, but to have a person in your picture, and you know, it might feel a little cliched, but in more and more of my pictures, I'm noticing that if there isn't a sense of scale, it doesn't have as much of an impact. You're like, oh, that's a pretty scene, but there's nothing to grab you and say, whoa, look at that space. Look how little that person is, or look at them up, you know, at the edge of some epic location. And so this talks a little bit about lens distortion, and a camera doesn't necessarily see the same thing our eyes do. Talk about wide angle lenses can make a real mess of perspective, which is important to think about. So we've got a good example of up close with a wide angle lens at 17, and look how big this gnome dominates the space. And then from more of a distance to kind of show the size and perspective in here. And then from even a little bit more. So this is kind of just a lesson on this, but it really, you know, provides a reference. And it doesn't always need to be a person, which is important. Like here, we've got a little, they're calling it a village. I'd call it a farm. But here is these tiny little buildings. So again, if those buildings weren't there, if you hide them with your finger for a minute or your hand, and you look at this and you say, this is a beautiful mountain scene, dusted lightly with snow. But when you reveal that village or that little farm down below, and you see just how puny those buildings are, it gives you a massive sense of scale. And I think with that massive sense of scale comes a lot more weight to the image.
Yeah.
So in here, Gullfoss, which is another waterfall that we visit. And man, I don't know what time of day they were here, but there are no people in this picture, which is pretty impressive. Usually, or no people that I can see easily. Usually this promontory out here at the end of the path is full of people in the path itself. So again, that's kind of cool that there's no people in there, but it doesn't give you a real sense for the size of this. It almost could be kind of a macro stream. But then, oh, are there people there? Yeah, when you zoom in, and you get the sense of these people, I think I might have put them out a little bit more so that they're framed in the water, not so much in the rock, but again, gives you a sense. And so this is a good point. If those people happen to be there, I can't tell if they are or not in that first picture, they're lost. So it doesn't matter just have the people or something, you got to be able to actually see that as well.
Yeah.
So this then talks about, you know, kind of selecting a wide lens aperture or zooming in on your subject, but having a significant distance to the background behind your subject and kind of including in the whole scene. Look how nicely they're framed in this valley dip here, someplace beautiful as well. So.
Well, and that one with the woman with the blue jacket that was just up there, that was interesting because had that person not been in that, that picture, had that person not been there, you wouldn't get the sense that there's an outcropping at all. It just looks like rock going into rock, right? And so it added a third dimension to it. It's taken it from a two-dimensional scene of just a bunch of rock to, oh yeah, okay, I can now see some depth to it.
Yep, I agree very much. I love this shot down here with the use of the line.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it kind of gives, again, you got a person in the foreground, and just one person in the foreground wouldn't do as much as this group of people all the way along here that give you a sense of this distance. It's very hard to tell distances at these grander scales. And so again, I would go back. It's somewhat cliche to throw people into your image, but it doesn't always have to be a person as they showed. It can be sometimes a building or a tree or something that gives kind of a sense just how massive a place is. So yeah, that was a short discussion. I'm rushing us a little bit here. Tim is plotting people's demise. I'm never going to stand next to a waterfall with Tim because he's just going to push me in, it seems like. Grab my camera. But let's now go to some Q&A. And just there's several more discussion articles that Roy has collected that are fantastic. So you should take some time and read those. And just a reminder that the show notes are linked right down below the show. All right, Jamie has the classic. Jamie Morgan's got the classic collection. Why does the color and lighting on my pictures come out so different from computer to printer? I cut my brightness back 50%, but then I can't see anything. Coloring, though, looks right, though sometimes completely different from the screen and the print or card. Do you want to start to tackle that, Steve?
Oh, wow. Well, this is the whole reason why I just go to a professional print shop. I've done some printing at home, and to be honest with you, it just drives me a little bonkers. Not to mention just the cost of getting ink and the time that I spend trying to get it right. I like to just find a local shop that I really trust and enjoy, and I go in there with my SD card, have my images, we sit down on their computer, and it's properly calibrated. Sometimes they'll just print me off an example on the type of paper that I want to print on, and then I know I'm good to go. So I know that's not a very good answer, but you know, the first thing that comes to mind is perhaps color calibration on your monitor. And Apple, you know, I've been pretty happy with my iMac, the way it's shipped, and I do everything in sRGB. And it's pretty consistent. Again, I don't do printing at home. I take it to my local shop here, and they do a great job. Bay Photo out of Santa Cruz has always done a really good job for me. And I usually tick the box that asks for color correction because I trust them, and I'm usually pretty happy with it. But it could be a color calibration on your monitor.
Yep. And so, Roy, you've got a fantastic article on color calibration, as he's pointing out in the chat. So that's something you might want to look at, Jamie. I also just got in for testing a really nice BenQ 4K monitor. Again, if you are trying to do this on a laptop screen from Jamie, I think you remember you have like a some kind of Windows laptop. They're typically not so nicely calibrated, and it might be worth either buying a nice monitor to plug in, since again you're trying to make some money at this. So this is where you start to see paying a little bit more for high quality gear, either monitors or the camera you're creating the image with, pays off for itself, or color monitoring. Now, the cheap way to do it is go ahead and, because kind of Steve hinted at this, print out a couple of images, if you're not printing at home, send them off to the lab, get them back, hold them up next to the computer, and try to match them up a little bit, make them look the same, figure out the brightness and the colors and things like that. You're saying the colors are mostly good, it's the brightness. So if you cut your brightness back to 50% and the picture looks good, well, then all right, so if you can't really see it when you're at 50%, go ahead and brighten it up. But keep in mind that before you send it off to the printer, you should bring it back to 50% to make sure it looks, basically the way you want. That's
Plus, if you are printing at home, I mean, there's a whole array of quality of printers too. I mean, for sure, you don't want to be doing much with laser if you're printing photos, inkjet, but then even taking it up to some of the Pro. I don't know what she's using, but like a Canon Pro 100 or Pro 10, they're awesome. They do a great job, but it requires getting it all dialed in. And then once it's dialed in, you got to keep buying ink for it and everything else. And they're huge too. My desk just doesn't fit. I had the Canon Pro 10 for quite a while. It just doesn't even fit on this thing. So, I hate to say it, but for me, I just like going to my local shop and talking to them about it and let them do the printing for me.
Yeah. And even some shops will send you a color profile that you can plug into your computer. And then you'll know that they're even a little bit closer.
And I've seen some really killer deals coming across on the Spider calibration. I don't know of any yet. I haven't shopped or looked at them for quite a while, but I think a month or two back, somebody was, and you may have shared it. I mean, it was a deep, deep discount, down from, I don't know, $400 to $80 or something crazy. Yeah. So there's some deals out there if you do want to go to color calibration. And Spider, I think, is like the Microsoft of color calibrating your monitor, right? They kind of are the go-to.
Yeah. And Roy's pointing out for small orders, Bay Photo provides free shipping. Some of the better labs, if you say, hey, I want a few test prints, they'll say, all right, and they'll give you a coupon code for a few test prints that you can really kind of try this out. Or, it might even be free. It might be a steep discount. And it's really worth it to get a couple of prints. And again, hold them up next to your computer and match them up. So got a couple different options there.
Yeah, you have to be careful, though. I will warn you that at my print lab, once you get above, I think it's 16 inches, they use a different paper for their large format printing than they do for their standard format printing. And every print lab is a little different in terms of where they want to draw that line. And their large format actually is a much better paper. It's a Fuji, I think, and it's got way more depth and color to it, and it's just gorgeous. Yeah. But it's totally different than the paper they use for an 8x10 or anything smaller than 16 inches. Yeah. So you want to ask them about that.
Yep. Good points. All right, Roger, you've watched my review of the new Tamron 100 to 400. I actually think you mean 18 to 400. And you'd agree that it does seem to be a very versatile lens with decent quality, food for thought. However, I didn't fully get the comparison as regards image quality by comparing it to the Sigma lens. So in that review, I compared it to the Sigma 100 to 400. I wanted to see how this do-it-all lens, magically invisible in my hand, compared to a dedicated telephoto that was affordable. The Sigma 100 to 400 is what I settled on for that. Roger, you're wondering, is there anything that suggests its image quality could be equal to that of the Canon 100 to 400 across part of that range? Any plans to test it against other lenses in the future? No. No to all of that. Right, so like that. This is a short one. The Canon 100 to 400. Steve, you own that lens. It's a fantastic lens.
It is. In fact, I was going to buy a 150 to 600, and I was debating between the Tamron and the Sigma. And then I decided, I actually did kind of a unauthorized test of it with somebody that had the new 150 to 600, the newest version. And then I had the 100 to 400. And it was better for me to just shoot at 400 and crop into 600 than to shoot at 600 with that lens. The clarity was just awesome with that lens. So that's why I decided to buy it.
Yeah. So Roger, I didn't compare that because it would make that Tamron 18 to 400 look pretty sad. I compared it against a more comparable lens that is, somewhat affordable. That Canon is, it's just a fantastic lens, and in contrast and colors and clarity, it blows away the competition, even as Steve just said, when you have to crop a little bit. So, they're in very different classes. If somebody wants one lens to do it all, I think that Tamron is, in my mind, without a doubt, the best option available today, and holds up extremely well against an affordable telephoto lens like the 100 to 400 from Sigma.
I'd love to see it compared to like the Canon 28 to 300.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's not a completely fair comparison, because that's a full frame and the Tamron's
cropped. That's right. That's the Tamron. I forgot the Tamron was cropped.
I wish, put it up against like the Canon 18 to 200. But I mean, all of those lenses, all of those other all lenses from Canon, from Nikon are several years old now, and they don't hold up that well. So, Bo, I think that's how you say your name, Boo, has a question in relation to extension tubes. Is there a chart, website, or rule of thumb to determine how each tube, those tubes come in different millimeter lengths, change the minimum focus distance for a lens? For instance, his Sigma 17 to 50 has a minimum focus distance of 11 inches. Is it as simple as the tube size is what you subtract from the minimum focus distance of the lens? I'll be the first to call myself clueless. Ha ha ha. My Photodiox tubes came with no manual. Thanks for the help.
Oh man, he beat me to calling ourselves clueless. So this is strictly a Toby question. This is way over my head, man.
This is pushing my areas of expertise. I've done some work with extension tubes, but not a whole lot. But Cambridge in Color has a nice extension tube calculator where, I mean, you got your native magnification, and then let's say you're putting it out at 50. You should almost always be using the lens at its maximum focal length with an extension tube. And let's say you put a 13 on there. It tells you your new magnification and your new close focusing distance. It tells you that in millimeters. So what is that? It's 24 centimeters, and which is about 12 inches. So come here to Cambridge in Color, or just Google macro tube extension calculator, and it will tell you. This is one of the things where I'll be honest, when I created my discussion video about macro photography and extension tubes, I didn't, talk a whole lot about how the tubes work, because I don't quite understand it so much. But I just know that you should always go to the maximum focal length of whatever lens you're working with, and you should usually use the longer lenses, give you a little bit better results. And you just kind of play with the focusing distance to see where you end up with. Most of the time, it does change that focusing distance. So go use that. And then post some of your excellent results. That's what I would say to do.
Good question, though.
Yep. And Tim is asking, is anyone else having trouble with Lightroom CC Classic being slow again? Where are you with this, Steve? You've upgraded. You've been using the update. Have you had much time to do post-processing with all of the website building?
I actually haven't. I'm embarrassed to say I've got all my New England photos uploaded into my computer, and I have not spent any time post-processing because it's just been nonstop pen stuff. But I did notice I did some work with it on my laptop when we were on tour, and I was all excited about it speeding up, and I personally did see a huge improvement in there. Not with the Classic. Now with the CC, just the standard CC version, it's super fast, but then you are somewhat limited. Not as limited as you are with the mobile, but you are limited, and it's super fast. But I've been a little disappointed. I wanted Classic to be faster. I don't anticipate it being much faster on my machine, but a lot of that too is I'm working off an external with I want to take my external to a USB-C or Thunderbolt 3 that should speed it up. getting that connection going. But personally, no, I haven't seen a huge improvement. Not enough for me to just get up and be excited about it.
Yeah, certain aspects of kind of moving through the library and switching from image to image and loading an image certainly seemed faster at first, and I think still seems faster, but editing has seemed to go back to where it was. Again, that brushing seemed to be more responsive at first, but for me has seemed to go back. I'll be honest though, I haven't done a ton of post-processing either since the update. Just only what I've kind of had to get pictures out, but very, very busy, which is a little bit disappointing. But I'm going to be interested. We're going to dive in here in a second to go to the critique part. And this is the first time we're going to be running the critique with the updated version of Lightroom. And I'm curious to see if it will bog down, because that's where I used to see it. It was terrible when I'm running the Hangout, and sharing my screen. So let's jump in and kind of keep an eye on that as we go. So I'm going to share my entire screen. I got to close that. Pop here to this. Let me have it fill the screen and bring up our first image. Looks like Jamie was here in Seattle. Where was I, Jamie? Did you take this on during the workshop time? So let's just kind of decide. Well, first let's just go through. See how they load very quickly, working through these images. Ooh, there's some pretty ones in here. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, that's good.
You added a tilt shift effect to that, I think, Heather. That's pretty neat. All right, so that's nice and fast. Let's see when we start to develop them, does it feel as fast? All right, so first up, we've got this kind of Seattle Space Needle centered right in the middle of the picture.
And it looks unedited at this point, right?
That's right. Yep, this is a raw straight out of the camera. So I've got my strong base. I'm just going to pop that on, and all that really does is adds a little bit of contrast, drops the highlights, bumps the shadows, bumps the whites up, bumps the blacks down. That's something that I feel safe doing on almost every picture based on the way I shoot. A lot of times I'll find myself then further, brightening it. I brighten this a good bit. And this is something right now, Jamie, I think you're still shooting the A6000. I'm pretty sure you said you're going to get the A7R3. When you get more megapixels, well, first off, I never want to tell anybody to shoot with cropping in mind, but when you have more megapixels and you've got the shot with, not a lot going on above or below, then, I'd bring it in to where it gets a little bit more interesting. And I think I would also decenter the Space Needle. Thinking about all the thirds, there can be arguments for centering something perfectly. I think if you get it off to the side a little bit more, the image becomes a little bit more interesting.
See, I would have done it differently, personally. I think that's cool. That definitely is cool. It's a great raw image. I like that little piece of blue sky up there, where it's like some drama is kind of encroaching in. I would do like an 8:10 ratio, and I would show very, very little water at the bottom. And I might even keep that Space Needle centered.
Yeah. So sorry, Steve, you did break up a little bit, so I didn't hear your what exactly you would say at the beginning.
Oh, I would leave just a very little water at the bottom, just like a sliver, just a tiny bit of it. There's kind of a really light boat line or something that's going by there. And then I would include the sky up to the top as much as possible, and in that more square format. And I'd probably keep the Space Needle centered like that. I like how this blue dramatic sky is starting to kind of creep in on this gray Space Needle thing.
Yep. I think those are good suggestions. I like it. One thing that I noticed though, as I zoom in, is we do have this boat that's now being cut just a little bit. So we could either go a little bit wider to make sure that we're not cutting that boat off, but
yeah, you definitely want to include that or clip it out in Photoshop.
Yep. Good points. Yep. Okay. And then, I think I would bump up the clarity in this region a little bit. I noticed that it's starting to get a little noisy because we've got a really high shutter speed, higher than I think we need based on our focal length of 83. You're at 1/2000th of a second. So you could have dropped this and then it could have dropped your ISO, because I certainly start to see some noise in the sky up there as well. So you got to watch that when you're photographing. But otherwise, this tighter shot here looks good. All right. We got another Seattle city skyline, kind of framed by these bushes and trees with a little bit more kind of moodier sky. I'm going to take the lead again, Steve, and you shout if you think I'm doing a terrible job. I'd come in. This branch bit's over there. I don't know, you know, and this little sliver of a crane or something is kind of catching my eye and standing out in a strange way. So, but I like the idea of framing it by these bushes. But I'm just going to get rid of those extra little bits that creep in on the side, just a tiny bit more. See those right there? Come in, so those aren't in there. And I'm going to use my strong base. But I'm going to bring up the shadows a bunch more because I want to start to see the green in this. You know, there wasn't enough of a silhouette to be excited about a silhouette. So I want to bring that up. So we're not seeing that. We've got a little bit more color and dynamic kind of feel to this image. And then I take out this little blue thing that's sticking in there from some branches over here. Yeah, you know what? It certainly, I just want to say for a second, Lightroom feels much faster in sharing this so far.
That's good.
It's definitely faster than it was. Okay. Anything else? The counter argument, Steve, or
no? I like what you did there. I almost wanted to see some of the branches from the left side just to frame it up a little more. And I think if you did show that, you'd have to probably do some alterations to where the buildings intersect. That branch there, you know, maybe that tower or something you'd have to pluck out. The only reason I say that is because we're kind of entering visually from left to right, and this kind of frames it all up. When it's left wide open there, I just find my eye kind of traveling along the bushes, and okay, there's a city in the background, and then I just get hit really hard with that thick green bushy area on the right side. And it just stops my eye. There's nowhere to wander around. Where this kind of frames it up, and I find my eye almost like you're watching a tennis match. It goes back and forth on the photograph, and I start to analyze the buildings more.
Interesting. Yep, I like that too. And I felt a little bad cutting it out because it does kind of help balance the right as well. Kind of just forms this nice little valley frame that we're peering at the city through.
Yeah, visually it creates this ping pong effect where I'm staying in the image. I'm not just like traveling across it and I hit that green bush and then I just want to move on.
Exactly. Okay. Next, we've got two images from Jamie, and we've been told, Jamie, that you want to merge these. You like the fisherman in this shot, but you like the wave in this shot. And let's see real quick. Photo merge. What do I want to know? I want to go to Edit In, Open as Layers in Photoshop. So it's going to bring these in and open these two in the new Photoshop. And we might. No, I think we'll just wait and see how fast they open. They're opening pretty fast. Good. Then what we should be able to do, we're in the crop mode. Let's get out of that. We should be able to go to Edit. Why can't I say Align Layers? Edit, Auto Align Layers. So it should look, and we're just going to say Auto and OK. And it's going to look at these two images that you looks like maybe shot at different focal lengths or a different angle. And so if we uncheck, you can see that we've got the fisherman moving. The dock doesn't move too much, but you can see it. You shot them at different focal lengths, didn't you? Because the size of the piers is really what I notice difference in moving. But let's just see for a second. I'm going to show the quick way to do this. So I'm going to get my E key. And if I just start erasing, we should get that water wave kind of showing like so.
Yep.
Now, image here, Jamie, so I'm going to be quicker on this, but look how we can kind of just get that. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's amazing to me about how much nature just kind of absorbs one picture into the other. Look, just picture now, but it just disappears into this one. Some perspective issues that I would bring back in and probably use the guided transform tool. I might actually do that before we get to Photoshop, but I just stuck them in here and then I just erase the piece that we want. That's how easy it is to merge images these days. you hit this and save it, and it's going to come back into Lightroom with, and then of course we can hit our crop in there and crop to the piece that we want. Something like that. I'm not sure. Was that our original? And there we go. 2 images in one. This is, it looks a little funny, but that was 15 seconds of work that I did that. So
yeah, but now you can use the guided tool.
And now we can use the guided transform tool.
Yeah.
But I'm going to skip that for now. Jamie. I'm going to skip that one for now too, Jamie, just because I'm sorry we're running out a little bit of time. And let's look at Heather's, which catches my eye because I think she's doing a tilt shift here, which I've done recently too. I don't do them very often, but we've got copy and we've got, so I think this is your original. I don't know why it's, oh, maybe you're actually using a tilt shift lens or a lens baby, if I remember correctly. I think you have lens babies. Heather, for those who don't know, those are those kind of quirky, artsy style lenses that allow you to do tilt shift effects and some other kind of selective focus. So you shot this image straight out of the camera is what it looks like, so no post-processing. And then here we see some post-processing that you've done. And, you know, I really like this effect at times. I think it's neat. It's a neat way to further draw your eye to something. So that's the good. The bad is, however, when we've cropped in so much, optically, those lenses are, I think, more artsy than Sharpie. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like we're starting to see some issues in this that is holding it back. He's just a little bit soft on his head, and maybe we missed focus a little bit. Okay, Heather's confirming this is the Lens Baby Edge 80, tilted for slice of focus. So I think I'd like a compromise a little bit here, because I'd like a little bit more of the water blur below him, just a little bit. Maybe try to find a spot right around here, like that. How different is that from what you ended up at? You cropped in a little bit more. I left it out a little bit. Leaving it out a little bit, I think, lessens the impact of seeing that his head is really starting to get out of focus. And also, I feel like a little bit more chromatic aberration around the boat there, a little purple in the bow than I want. But now, you know, yeah, I brighten it a little bit. Well, let's just try my strong base real quick and see what we end up with. That's pretty close to what you did do as well. Maybe brighten it a little bit. I just, because you shot it, a little bit of green up there creeping in, I don't like. Because you shot it with this effect in mind, I would edit it in such a way that you make sure that it's clear on the bottom as well, that you kind of got this slice of focus. So what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think coming out from the tight crop is absolutely necessary. I like where you landed on that, and the reasons you've already discussed is when you shoot with a tilt shift, or in this case a lens baby, and it's funny, it says set to slice of focus. That's exactly what happens, is you just get this little band where you can get focus, and you have to be very, very careful, because the person that you're trying to get in focus has to be on the same plane as something else that you're focusing on. And if they're not, it's thrown off very quickly, and the more you crop in, the more you notice that. So you almost have to take these shots with as little cropping as possible taken into consideration. And yeah, it's kind of fun to play around with it, but if I was really to work this image, I would take all the clutter of the branches and trees out from around the boat, so he stands out on his own, and maybe you leave the bigger clump over to the left for perspective. Yeah. And that would just give him a real toy effect. But there's just a lot of busyness going on around him. I think coming out, ironically, you notice the boat more than you do when you're going in, because you get so focused on the areas that are out of focus and the narrow band of clarity that you're able to see. So yeah, I think your feedback is right on.
And you know, this is one of those things where I wonder, Heather, if you know, what did it look like to the right of the frame. Is this a spot where this is a neat picture, but it could have been even stronger if there was a more open space to frame him. I do like kind of the crispiness of these branches going in here. So we're definitely not saying no branches, but as Steve is saying, just you know, a lot of intersection happening here, and that takes away from some of it. But it's neat, and I'm excited to see more of what you're creating with this lens, because they're fun. All right. Oh, look at our. I think you removed a contrail or something. Let's see what you removed across this image. Oh, a power line. Done. I'm on the spot removal tool, so that came up right away. So here we have a beautiful sunset and nice image. Now,
so real quick though, before we get started on this, just a tip. When I haven't seen this image with the power line or whatever was removed, but it looks like it was removed in sections. There are a bunch of dots up there, right?
Yes.
You should be able to click one section, hold the shift key down, and then click the end of it, and it will just block out the whole thing. You know, it'll draw a straight line. I used to do that with all my real estate in Windows. You just go to one corner of the window, hold the shift key down, click on the lower corner, and it draws a straight line. Does that make sense?
Down shift. Yep, it does. I just want to kind of demonstrate. If I click here, shift, and click here. Oh, no, I have to. Oh, yeah, there it goes.
See, there you go.
It drew, and I think you all can see what it did, but let me just pop it up here so you can, and say clone, just so you see very clearly this. It's doesn't mean it's perfectly horizontal, but it can connect two dots you put down, and you do that by holding down shift. That's a great tip. And in this situation, you know, this is tricky though, because kind of intersecting different things, you might want to see how he's pulled from that line at different times. So I think Matthew made a good call here. Sections, but Steve, your tip is great. Now we go to the image. I turned the cropping on right away because I was curious how far down does this go, because we've got silhouette here that's lovely, but it's just a lot of darkness that goes down, down, down. I think we need all of that. I think, you know, the exciting and impactful part of this image is a pretty narrow strip right across the middle. Mm-hmm. And I would crop in such a way to emphasize that. Do you agree, Steve?
Totally. Yeah, I was just going to suggest a 16:9 ratio.
Yeah, let's go 16:9. Actually, let me just for fun go to 21:9 for a minute and see.
Just do a free form, you know, because it is that big, long, wide.
Yeah,
I think that looks cool.
Yep. And so then I think this is interesting. And is this a mark on my monitor? There's this little bit. See that? Look at that. It's like somebody else's camera or something catching a light down there. So I just noticed that. I'm just going to clone that out real quick. But otherwise, I think this is really nice. Did you do anything to the sky? I might bring a gradient down in the sky and just bring it over. Gosh, it's turning green up there, isn't it?
I think you're oh, there, it's back. It was kind of really freezing and getting jittery on me there. I don't know if other people get that or not.
Okay, so I moved our temp and our to the right just a little bit to kind of further emphasize those sunset colors. Let me turn that off and back on. I'm kind of surprised, and I might come down to the color. I feel like the green here is left a good bit, and then come into the yellow and shift that into the orange. There we go. Now we're battling back against that kind of off color a little bit. I don't know how well this is coming through, but now I feel like I've battled the green in the sky away, the hints of green, and really just have this really warm orange shot, and I think it's really nice. So narrowed it down a little bit and warmed it up, but overall, really nice image. All right, Maxence. Spent some time in Shenandoah. I saw your pictures, Maxence, on Instagram. You guys had this inversion, and so you were up above the clouds. I love that. I think that is one of the coolest things that you can do. Anytime you're on land, but you're above the clouds, it's an amazing experience and an awesome photographic opportunity. And you've chosen here to kind of take this, true tree, interesting tree, and silhouetted against all of this landscape with a little peak of the sun in there as well. And you can see, again, I don't know how well this is coming through, but we've got nice starburst. You're shooting at f13, so you got a nice starburst from the sun. It's kind of the classic kids drawing sun. And this is really nice. Some suggestions?
There's not a lot I can say about this one. I think it's a great picture. It's really pleasing. It's I suppose if I was splitting hairs and I had to get critical, I'd say if you were to take this shot again, I'd want to see a little bit more on the right side. The sun is very close to the edge of the frame, but God, it's beautiful. The colors they're in it, and it just invokes, kind of a sense of feeling. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of nice. I like the sun right there, so maybe just brightening the foreground a bit, get a little bit more detail in it, but not too much, because I really, I like the exposure kind of where it was.
Yeah, I did too overall, but I did want to see a little bit more of this foreground.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing this in, and totally agree. It's just a little bit more room on the right of the sun. I agree as well. So just kind of bringing that up a little bit, and just give a hint of that, and you can play around with the color sliders there as well.
And I know it's not a total capture of what actually was here, but I would probably play around with in Photoshop with the branches a little bit. Just try to tell my own story with the tree branches.
Yeah.
But I think compositionally, it looks like, who was it that did this one?
This is Maxence. There was on the right. This was his limit. You might, Maxence, you might see what you can do in Photoshop with a content-aware scale. See if you can that right-hand side out just a little. It's not an image breaker or a deal breaker, but it would feel a little bit more balanced if the sun wasn't so close to the edge. And I think you might be able to get that out. But lovely image, and just a little bit of brightening of the shadows I think is good.
Yeah, nice job.
Oops. Oh, there's a picture of Henry in his.
But
we are. Oops, sorry. I need to stop us here. I know which, but we will get to those next week. Why? Oh, there's no show next week. Maybe there will be. Let me look at my schedule. It's actually family vacation, and I'm very excited about that. But if it looks like I won't be able to do a show next week, then I will get the rest of these images critiqued to you all very soon, along with a couple more. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Go spend some time with your dad, who I know is in town. Folks in the chat, thank you for being along with us. Thank you for being supporters. Keep an eye out. Very soon, I'm going to post the corrected link. If you haven't already gotten into the PEN system, that's the Photo Enthusiast Network that Steve and I talked about at the beginning of this video, then that link will be there again very shortly, and you can get in, and basically you have access to additional content for what you're already paying to support Patreon. And we're really excited that we've launched that today. There'll be lots more that we'll be talking about it from this point on. But the most important thing I want you to know is, if you got questions or comments, so we can figure out. There's definitely some confusion. Things we think are really clear, like, hey, this is what we think. And then some back to us, and we go, oh, right, that's clear as mud, they say down. Is that they say down south?
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Okay, thought so. All right, everybody, thanks so much. Soon. Bye-bye.
See you later. Thanks.